The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHD. It's Thursday, the 13th of November, 2025. We are live here with Financial Rebellion. Good morning, Catherine. Good morning, Carolyn.
Good morning.
Well, we did have fun when we were all together, did we not?
Oh, we had the best time ever.
It's really important for us all to be physically together. I realised that after this conference, just getting to know the staff, because we're so remote and stuff, it just makes you love them more when you see them. Now, everybody, I got my Solari Report Faraday bag. I love it.
Isn't it great?
I love it, but I do have to pull you up with this QR code here. What's going on?
What can I tell you? The manufacturer puts that in, but we take it immediately out and throw it right out.
It's coming straight on out. It says, if you want to know how to use it, use a QR code. So when you get it, people, whisk it out. That's not part of Solari at all. But it did make me laugh. All right, so what have we got first coming up? We have, we're going to talk a bit. I think we've got a headline here, Lou, if you can put that up. Emboldened, Kennedy allies embrace a label they once rejected. Anti-vax, a weekend gathering in Texas to activists, homeopaths, doctors, lawyers, parents, and a Republican senator who asked, why isn't Tony Fauci in prison? Very good question. Yeah, we do reject anti-vax. There's a word that's caused to divide us. We're ex-vaxxers. Do you want to say anything, you two? Gone very quiet.
I'm happy to be called an anti-vaxxer. I'm against all vaccines.
Well, I'm anti-poison. So I think it's wrong to poison people, let alone intentionally, let alone do it to children. So I'm anti-poison.
Okay, well, you know, here's the thing. I don't want them getting away with calling me an anti-vaxxer because I vaccinated my kids with disastrous results. So I'm an ex-vaxxer. I did vaccinate, and now I do not and would never touch one again. So ex-vax is where I think we should go, because they just love to throw anti-vax out there, and that means they get away with the fact that we did vaccinate and we did poison our children, and they are either dead or severely injured, and that's the bottom line.
Right. So I wanted to cover this story because it was a great reminder. You did a fabulous panel on what happened with the accusation of children dying from pneumonia, of dying from measles. Mm-hmm. And Andrew Wakefield pointed out that there were people from the Washington Post and the New York Times, and I think one other
Bloomberg.
Who was it?
Bloomberg.
And he described how really they have contributed to literally murder and poisoning by the way that they've manipulated the coverage. Anyway, and I thought it was one of the best moments in the conference. And I thought, you know, if I was sitting from the New York Times and the Wall Street or the Washington Post or any of these sort of propaganda organs, it would have really touched me. But anyway, the New York Times wrote an article that was so shocking, and I shouldn't be shocked because I've seen this 1,000 times, but essentially you're sitting there listening to the fact that we as a country are essentially poisoning our children as we speak. And rather than talk about how we stop this, they went and did a whole series of different snippy and snide comments. And you think the woman who wrote this for the New York Times is a mother. How could a mother do this? Anyway, one of the things they pointed out, so it's Cheryl Gay Stolberg, and one of the things she said was that I had been loose with my facts because Bill Gates, I had implied that Bill Gates wants to put a tattoo under your skin. So I went back and went through all the different links of the articles covering Bill Gates, talking about the tattoos, and basically this is a technology that can be on the skin or beneath the skin, and it refers to both. And it's quite, calling me incorrect for the facts is just well, one, it's irrelevant. Two, it's not important. But three, if you look at all the links we'll put up, I'm clearly correct. Although, a tattoo can be both under the skin and on the skin. And the key point, though, is that you literally are watching technologists try to replace carrying surveillance device called smartphones and now basically tattoo your or mark your body. And Christians call this the mark of the beast. The other thing they implied was that Gates is no longer critical to Microsoft, which is ridiculous. If you look at how much stock he and his company owns, we're talking about tens of billions of dollars of investment. And if you know anything about the corporate world, an investor who commands that much of the brand and that much owns that much of the stock is unbelievably powerful in a company. And so to imply went off the board in 2020, has no clout at Microsoft, for anybody who knows anything about money or finance, is totally ridiculous. And yet, they had the temerity to do it. Anyway, so it was such a perfect example of trying to create issues out of nothing to be snide and irrelevant, when in fact you bury the lead, which is our children are being poisoned right now and we need to stop it. And I just thought, if you still subscribe to the New York Times, why are you supporting this?
And also, Catherine, you're doing the right thing. I'm so into calling out the press. That's what Mary and I do every single week.
But they're not the press. I'm not even going to call the New York Times the press anymore. They're just a propaganda organ. They're a tool that supports and facilitates mind control. It's just, we just published, Carolyn and I and Solari team just published Neurowarfare, which is a wonderful overview of military-grade neurowarfare that's being used on people. And then Josh Dialman just published the beginning of his Cognitive Liberty series, which is just unbelievable. And if you don't understand what I'm talking about now, go listen to Josh Dialman lay out the whole history of the extent of the lies. And it's hard for a thinking person to believe that the lies are this extraordinary, but here we are.
That's right. If you want to see Josh Darwin that Catherine's talking about, that's on Solari. You need to go over there.
Right. Anyway, so and if there's anybody who can help, and who's been leading the effort to stop this kind of technology, really putting us into the corner and controlling us, it's our guest today. So go ahead, Polly. You introduce Twila.
Well, yes, Twila, come on. Good morning. It's so lovely to have you back. Where is she? Where's Twila?
I'm here.
Well, she's up in Minnesota, but there she is.
I'm here.
It's so fantastic to have you back on, Twila. You're possibly my favorite Financial Rebellion guest. I do enjoy having you on. It's so much fun. Let's get into it. Should we get into, are we going to play the tattoo one just to back up what you just said?
Oh, yes. Let's play the tattoo clip.
Yeah, and then Twila can talk.
Can I see your Brit card, please?
Here at Chaotic Moon, we're researching something we call tech tats. And these are devices that are mounted on the skin and allow for a simple integration of electronics with the human body. So this is really going beyond what the fitness tracker is. And we're right now looking into the medical field specifically because there's a lot of monitoring devices that take up a lot of room and space. So rather than going to the doctor once a year to get your physical, this tech tattoo could be something that you just put on your body once a year, and it monitors everything that they would do in a physical and sends that to your doctor. And if there's an issue, they could call you. So the tech tattoos can really tie in everything into one package. So it can look at early signs of fever, your vital signs, heart rate, everything that it needs to look at to notify you that you're getting sick or your child's getting sick. So another beautiful thing that tech tattoo kind of takes over and disrupts the market is in the banking industry. We carry wallets around and they're so vulnerable. With a tech tattoo, you could carry all your information on your skin, and when you want your credit card information or your ID, you can pull that up automatically through the system. So the great thing about this idea is that it not only serves a really awesome purpose, but it can also be really aesthetically fun.
Oh my God, these people need Jesus.
Yep,
Fuck.
they do.
Aesthetically fun.
Twyla, talk us through a bit of that. I mean, what do we know about that? I mean, how much injury can it cause?
Well, I don't know exactly how much physical injury it can cause, but what it really means is just such a much more deeper, literally, deeper collection of data on us and who we are and what we're doing and what our body's doing. And just imagine if you were, we'll just take an example, like if you were not telling the truth about something, right? And if you're not telling the truth about something, like your heart rate will increase, your sweat might increase, all sorts of these things. And so rather than just looking at your face and trying to figure out what's happening here in your eyes and see if somebody's lying, they can actually see that, you know, everything is increasing. It's almost like having a polygraph. A polygraph on you, you know, at all times is the potential that could happen here by this kind of deep integration of sensors and tracking into your body. So, you know, they want they want to sell it as fun, and a lot of people are very concerned about health, and that's why they could be controlled during COVID, right? And so, but the last thing that you need is scaring them more, because you're coming up with all of these things that these so-called tattoos and sensors claim about you to keep you continually thinking about what's going on in your body. And then they're, of course, watching as well.
Petrifying. We have another clip, I think, Lou, don't we? Should we move on to that?
Is that the Bill Gates tattoo?
Technical issues this morning.
Bill Gates claimed smartphones, smart devices are all going to be replaced by these electronic tattoos.
Getting a tattoo can actually save your life. And not only you can take this tattoo on your skin, but also on your organs. And they are ideal for monitoring our health, including muscle activity, heart diagnostics, blood pressure, skin temperature, and much more.
2013, former DARPA director Regina Dugan went on stage and casually showed off an electronic tattoo.
And it has an antenna and some sensors embedded in it.
No passwords, no fobs, just a signal pulsing beneath your skin.
Tattoo that could be used for authentication.
But when the key is your body, what happens when the lock changes? They don't need to convince you. They just need to program the next generation.
10 to 20-year-olds don't want to wear a watch on their wrist, but you can be sure that they'll be far more interested in wearing an electronic tattoo, if only to piss off their parents.
First, they'll brand your skin, then they'll rewire your biology.
So I take a vitamin every morning. What if I could take vitamin authentication? It means that my arms are like wires, my hands are like alligator clips. When I touch my phone, my computer, my door, my car, I'm authenticated. What this means is that becomes my first superpower. I really want this superpower.
They'll sell you your own enslavement, one upgrade at a time.
Horrific. I mean, it's just, I mean, when, Twila, how long have we got before this comes into play? Or is it already in play?
Well, of course, there have been people who have been putting chips under their skin for a while for a variety of authentication, or even for banks. I think it was Sweden who started doing that as a sort of a pilot project with people. So, you know, this is all about just convincing people that the next greatest technology is the next technology is the next greatest thing, and they've just got to have it. And it's all a bunch of whirligigs and wonder, right? Without them seeing that really what's going on here is you put that thing under your skin or on your skin, and you don't have a piece of paper that says who you are, and they just decide to pull the plug on you, then you are no more. And everything that you want to do will not happen. And so you become a non-human if you cannot prove by this electric and digital authentication that you are who you are. And suddenly you find yourself in a world in which you are not welcome, and you are not able to transact, and you cannot move, and you cannot, you know, buy or sell. You can't do anything. All they have to do is pull the plug on you. So when you become dependent on a government identification that's embedded in you or on you, you know, this is just like real danger for the country, but real danger for humans, you know, as well. And I mean, this is an interesting thing that they're doing in Utah. They have a new law about a state endorsed identification system, but they say an interesting thing in Utah, and I'm just going to read it here. it says it is the policy of Utah that each individual has a unique identity. The state does not establish an individual's identity. The state may, in certain circumstances, recognize and endorse an individual's identity. The state is obligated to respect an individual's privacy interests associated with the individual's identity. So what it's saying here is that the government doesn't give you your identity. So they put that in law, but they simply endorse it through this new ID. Now, I haven't quite decided what I think about this new state-endorsed digital ID, which apparently doesn't track. But the fact of the matter is, in any digital system, in any digital ID, there is a identification system behind it, because of course it's digital and it's government issued. So there's got to be a system. So I think moving to digital ID in any way, shape, or form still puts us at the mercy of the government and who's in power. And we have to keep our identity within ourselves and under our own control. It can't be under the control of the government.
So let me mention something, because I do know a little bit about the Utah system. So I think the folks in Utah want to do something so they can stop the feds from controlling. Mm-hmm. But here's the critical question. Will the database be owned and controlled entirely by the state and state employees with no corporate contractors? And if you put a corporate contractor in there, particularly one who's one of the lead contractors for DOD and for the intelligence agencies, you can kiss that whole system goodbye. It's integrated into the, whatever the feds want to do. So that's one of it's very much in the design of these things, whether they are compromised or not.
Yeah, but I agree with you, but I would just have to say that as soon as it is the government and as soon as it's not in your hands and it's in your body and it's all dependent on their system, as soon as they change the system, whoever happens to be in power at that time, then they're in power of whether or not you can do anything in your life and whether you have an identity or if you become a non-person, so I don't like the whole thing at all.
I'm with you. So during the litigation, and Carolyn remembers this, there was a great effort to basically wipe out my identity, including insisting that I'd never been the Assistant Secretary of Housing. And I had so much paper that documented everything I had done or everything I was, and they couldn't, they tried to steal my identity. And if they'd had a system like this, I would have been toast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the funny thing, of course, is that the movies that we have seen over the last 20 or 30 years talk about this kind of a thing, right? Where somebody comes in and they wipe you. They it's like they wipe you off the map. And, when we watch those movies, I think probably with interest, but now we know that they could actually do it. They can actually do it. And nobody knows who you are except your family attests for you. And then they're like, yeah, well, who says, you're just, we don't know that you actually know this person. You're just attesting. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because we don't have you in the government.
Well, and private corporations would adopt this. I mean, they told us, I remember distinctly, I don't know, 60 years ago, promises that they would not use Social Security numbers as identification. Mm-hmm. They promised us that, and that's not true. Private companies, vendors use those all the time. So, of course, the private industry is going to adopt it. And what happens when somebody steals it or puts information in there that isn't true about you? How do you get it out?
So I'll be blunt. I believe the people who will run and control the system are the same people who are allowing or facilitating all the identity theft and cybercrime. So you're basically, whether as it relates to banking or the government, you're allowing the worst criminals of the world to basically control you through the system.
And the most powerful, right? And people in positions that are there by virtue of somebody putting them in that position or their job or whatever it is, but they have this power now over all the rest of us, and they are seeking to get more power over the rest of us in a digital format, but it's all being sold like it's all fun and play and convenient and, just great and grand, and you'll never have to lose a piece of paper in your life. Isn't that marvelous? But it's not.
So maybe we should define both real ID and digital ID. So, Twila, if you could start us off again, and what is a digital ID and what is a real ID?
So a digital ID is putting your a system, essentially, that puts your identification in whatever format the system requires. So whether it is a biological or it's your body part, your biometric, right? Or if it is a number, or if it is a combination of all of them, or if it's like a DNA, whatever it is, but it is an electronic version of it, and it's in a computer system, and it is saved in a database, and it interacts, and it interacts with systems, it interacts with you just showing it on your phone or whatever, but it's not a piece of paper. So it's electronic, it's digital, and it's claiming, different parts of you making up your identity, whatever the system is.
Okay.
And the real ID could become digital. It's not digital yet.
That's correct. But in some places, I believe it is digital. So I just looked up in Utah, they have 103,000 people that have a mobile driver's license. And I do believe that is a digital real ID, because they are 95% compliant with real ID. So I would have to believe that those digital IDs or digital driver's licenses are digital real IDs. So as opposed to most people who are walking around today with their real IDs, it looks just like a card. It's in your hand, it's in your wallet, right? It's not digital, it's not on your phone. And I do believe that in the testimony that AMVA gave to Congress in December of 2023, that they said something like, we're going to move towards digital real ID. And for a while, people will have a document, a paper hard copy document in their pocket or in their wallet or whatever, and they'll have a digital ID. So they'll be able to show to those who can't verify, like if the police can't verify digital ID, but just need to actually look at the hard copy, it'll be available for you to pull out at a traffic stop, for example. But then some other places you might be able to use the digital version of real ID. And so AMVA, I think, sees this, and the AMVA are the DMVs around the country. So this is the organization of state DMVs. And so I think what they're seeing is that we're going to gradually move people over to a digital real ID, but in the process, and for a while, people are going to have both of them, because not every system that needs your ID can handle or will agree or accept the digital version of a real ID.
So let's go back. A real ID is something that evolved from an effort to get a national ID at the time of the Patriot Act, and it's been integrated with the driver's licenses in every state. So most people get a real ID attached or integrated into their driver's license, correct?
Yeah, although I'd like to say it's sort of the other way around. What they have is a real ID, and the federal government is allowing the state to use it for driving purposes. And so one of the things I just like to say to get people to understand how this is working is that when you have a real ID, the real ID is a federal ID masquerading as a state driver's license. People see it looks just like their driver's license before they got a real ID, but they do notice that there's a star on it. So it's a whole masquerading process here, which is keeping the American people from understanding what's happening. And essentially, the federal government has hijacked the state DMVs by virtue of the fact that the legislators around the country have decided to bow to the federal government to give up the constitutional right rights and the 10th Amendment rights of the people and the states and hand it over to the federal government. So the federal government has nationalized identification and driving privileges. Or you could say that they have nationalized identification through the Real ID and then told the states, yeah, you can use it as a driver's license. We will allow you to use it as a driver's license, but we require it for getting on a plane. We require it for federal buildings. We require it for nuclear facilities. And according to the law, we can require it for anything that we want that the secretary determines. And so it's a federal ID, and it could be a federal ID that would be required for you to open a bank account, to access medical care, to go to college, to or rent a hotel room, or rent a car, or get married, or anything, because that's what the law says. The law says that its official purposes include any purpose that the Secretary of Homeland Security shall determine. So any purpose. And right now, the American people don't realize the system that's being set up here. I think the other thing to understand about Real ID is that the federal government is creating a facial recognition system for the country through the Real ID. Because the Real ID requires a biometric starting with the face. And so, the idea that the government has claimed a right to collect and capture the coordinates of your body for their control should be anathema to every American. But Americans don't realize this. They don't realize that the picture that's being taken is a digital picture for the creation of a facial recognition system, a government facial recognition system where all of people's faces are being put into a database. And I'm going to add here, because a lot of people, they go to the DMV and they don't understand the picture that's being taken. They just think it's a picture, right? They don't understand. But what they do understand is that when they go to fly, they're being asked to stand in front of a camera there. So what I'd like to say about that is, so this whole facial recognition system is being created through the Real ID, and about 56% of the American public have their faces in the government database already. And so what happens when you get to the TSA checkpoint and they ask for your Real ID, or some people, of course, will give their passport now, right? We can talk about that. But anyway, what they're doing is they're putting your ID into a machine, usually controlled by IDEMIA, the company in France, and then they're asking you to stand in front and you're going to take a picture. And I really believe that they are educating the computer system to realize what you look like when you appear in different ways. Do you appear with shorter hair, longer hair, earrings, a turtleneck up, a hat on? What is it that you look like that's different from the picture that's on this card that you're going to carry around for 4 to 6 to 8 years, looking the same way? But here's how you look today. Train the computer system to actually identify you on the street in this facial recognition system.
So I just talked to somebody last night, Twila, who'd come back into the country and went through the normal line, and was never asked for their passport. It was just all done with facial recognition, and they don't remember ever giving their picture to the system.
Was this in the other country or in our country?
In our country.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Yeah, so that's the first time I've heard that.
Yeah.
But if you go to other countries, you can't. I tried to opt out of the TSA, the things that our TSA does, the x-rays or whatever those are. I tried to opt out of that in England and they wouldn't let me. They said, not in this country.
That's right.
You don't opt out of that.
No. And so in this country, you're allowed to opt out. And so the interesting thing is probably the airport, because that is for me an interesting thing about going to different airports and seeing the different systems and hearing the different questions and dealing with the different TSA agents, because ultimately it comes down to the TSA agents. Like, I've actually gone through without, being able to go through the normal scanner that we always had to. And I shouldn't have been able to do it. I shouldn't have been able to do it because I had asked for a pat down and they just let me go through. And so, it's really about the individual people and who's following it to the letter of the law and who isn't, and what is the letter of the law in the TSA. If you get all sorts of different responses, in Minneapolis, I had a TSA agent tell me, so I know what this process is, and I handed my boarding pass and my passport card to the TSA agent. Now, that was my problem. I forgot. But I knew he was going to ask for the boarding card, right? And then I said, I'm opting out. But I said, I'm opting out just as he put my ID through that machine. He said, I put it through and you can't opt out. I said, yeah, nope, I'm opting out. There's nothing that says I can't opt out just because you put it in your machine. He goes, once I put it in the machine, you cannot opt out. I said, I'm not, it says right here I can opt out. He said, okay, well, you will never be able to do this again. And I thought, you're one TSA agent. What do you mean I'll never be able to do this again? Right? Well, what are you saying to me? But that's, that's the kind of thing that you deal with.
Tyler, quick question. Here in Texas, I can't get the star thing off my my driving license. Is there some states where you just can't, you have to have it, Real ID?
Yeah, so here's a really interesting thing. Now, Lou could pull this up at refuserealid.org and go to the bottom of the page, Lou, and find the red map. So we have this new red map here, and we're asking people to register that they have made the switch. But we're also asking them if they tried to make the switch and they couldn't. And what's really interesting about this is that we have a lot of people now who have tried to make the switch and cannot make the switch. And they report their state. So now we're seeing all of these states where they cannot make the switch, but you can see on the map. So you can see on the map all these places where they have made the switch. People have made the switch in there. But
you mean switched back to the old ID?
Switched back to a state driver's license. Right. So we're asking people to go and we're asking them to come here and register that they have done it. And so we're building these numbers as people learn about this map and have started to come in. But if you look, is it above that, Lou? Could go to, yeah, you see that? Tried to switch, made the switch, tried to switch. 103 people. Well, I asked my team, I said, where are they from? And they're from like 15, 18 different states. But all those states, you saw all those states, except the 5 that don't let you switch. You saw all of those states. Somebody has made the switch, or they've declared that they have made the switch, right? And so I think this is rogue DMV agents. That's what I think. I think this is agents who are saying, we're not going to let you.
So we have been told by people that you have to print out the section from their website that says you can switch and take it in, and they tell you you can't switch, and you have to keep going up the line with the paper proving that you can switch until they do it. So you have to be pretty aggressive.
Yes, pretty aggressive. I know somebody in Connecticut apparently actually took it to their state legislator, who then contacted the DMV and said, let them switch. But the other thing that we have found is that we can't find a law or a rule in all states. So we're trying to get to the different states and figure out what's actually happening. And it's very strange. Some of them are so integrated in different parts of the statute that you can't find a Real ID law change. But some of them, it's like, well, we don't find anything. And so we kind of think that some of the DMVs have just complied without any law or rule behind it.
Wow.
And we're not certain yet. We're not certain yet, but we're thinking that that's possible. And of course, with what the DMVs did between the time when all of these states said no, between 2000 and 2009, a bunch of states passed laws completely prohibiting any movement toward the Real ID, and a bunch of states passed resolutions opposing it. And so nothing happened after 2009 until Obama in 2015 declared that you wouldn't be able to fly in 2016. So that's a 7-year, have I got that math right? 7-year time period where nothing was happening, or so we thought. But then we saw an article published in May 2020 where this researcher went and talked to these 5 people who, it was all anonymous because nobody wanted to get in trouble. But we found out that there's this little 5-member Real ID office within the U.S. Department of Homeland Security who had decided that the way to make this happen was to individually work with the individual DMV offices. And so these DMV officers were taking money from the Real ID office, this tiny little office in the Homeland Security. They were taking money to advance their state into Real ID.
Without state legislation?
Yes, and
Wow.
including in the states that prohibited them from doing anything. And so there are quotes in that article of this these DMV people who are saying, yeah, we had to do it behind the backs of our governors, and we had to make sure the governor wouldn't be embarrassed because the governor had come out against Real ID. And here we are, you know, bringing the state to about 95% of the way to full compliance. So that when Obama said that, and then all the states started to bow because national media picked it up and scared the American public, and the American public is telling their legislators, fix this because I need to fly, right? So all the states started to give up our constitutional rights and just bow to the federal government and let Real ID happen. And so, you know, they were 95% of the way there. So it just took a little boom and they were in. You know,
so this is, believe it or not, this is a major issue with state legislators finding that their bureaucracies are entering into contracts and taking money with the federal government that are in violation of the state constitution,
right,
and for which there is no state legislative authority.
Right.
And so this is a real, you know, the bureaucracy sneak is a really big issue that's coming up more and more.
So you can understand why this article was done with 5 anonymous sources, including, I think, someone from Cato, but all of them were anonymous, no matter what side of the Real ID issue that they were on, because I think nobody wanted to get in trouble for admitting what happened during those years. But by this, I mean rogue DMV agents. Clearly, they were all being rogue, right? So I think there are rogue DMV agents today.
So
Twila, can I share my experience? I forgot my passport when I flew to the Weston Price conference, and I thought I wouldn't be able to fly. I thought, well, I may as well go through the TSC and see what they do. And I said, I forgot my passport. And the guy said, you have your regular driver's license? I said, yes, handed it to him, and he let me through. And I heard that the same thing from a lot of people at the conference, that they had gotten through, either they had their passport and they didn't need it, or they didn't have it and they were let through. And there was some talk of an alternative under the law, and I haven't looked up the law, but that you could get through, but they could ask you things like, what was the color of your first car, and go into databases where they could dig up information about you and have you verify that. So it is absolutely not true that you cannot fly without a Real ID.
Yeah, we say you can't fly is a lie.
Right.
And but it's a lie on several levels. So one is the rule that Secretary Kristi Noem has to follow that was issued in January, which says that progressive enforcement begins on May 7th, 2025, so this past May, right? But it ends on May 5th, 2027. So there is a 2-year progressive enforcement rule. And if you read the rule, which is 65 pages long, and I have done, if you read the rule, what you can tell is this whole rule was written for the airports because they saw disaster, public backlash, and, you know, operational disaster in the airports if they had put the hammer down on May 7th. And they actually say in the rule that in some cases, there will be no requirement of Real ID for the entire 2-year period. But so that's just one level. The other level is there are 16 identification documents that the TSA says that they will accept. But on May 7th, interestingly enough, suddenly it appears on the page that lists all of those, it suddenly appears the words that are something like, be sure to check back on this page more often because it could change. So that was brand new as of May 7th. But there, of course, your passport, it'll get you in and out of the country. It'll certainly get you around the country, no matter what else they do. They can't really take away the passport. But the other thing is just what you said, Carolyn. This has always been the case because even with a regular ID, people have lost it. People have had it stolen. There's always been a process to get you onto the flight, and there has never been a law requiring an ID for flying. People don't understand that, but that was just an FAA regulation. It was challenged one time, but the court refused to actually rule on that particular provision. They only ruled and got mad at, they essentially told the person you could have submitted to a search. So we're dismissing your case essentially. So they didn't rule on the fact that there was no law at all to require an ID to fly.
So this is proof positive that the complexity that can be created when the government lies is extraordinary.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you look at your knowledge, Twila, I just can't imagine. It's like you need a PhD to understand what in the world is going on here, right?
But I think there are just a few facts that people should have solid in their brain and they should tell their neighbors about. So they should tell their neighbors about the plan that Real ID is going to be digitized, put on their phone, and accessible to the government. I mean, that's a fact. That's what the plan is. They should tell about the fact that a facial recognition system is being created by virtue using the Real ID so that the government will have everybody's face in the entire nation. They should say it's a federal ID masquerading as a state driver's license. And they should say that it's really establishing the framework for a social credit system like in China, and it will be used as an internal passport. Like everything that you could do in this country, everything that you do with an ID would suddenly be under federal control.
So I think you're being way too nice because a digital ID is the central point that you need to have programmable money, which is what you need for complete control. Mm-hmm. And so we're literally talking about, a government coup d'etat. So I wanted to, Britain is, one of my allies love to say the Commonwealth countries are using sticks, America's using honey to get you into the trap. But Britain is a little bit further along with what they're doing with BritCard. So I wanted to show the video we have on BritCard to give you a sense of what Twila is talking about here in terms of what a digital ID system can then do to control you.
Can I see your Brit card, please?
I don't have one. I don't have a smartphone.
Can I get another pint, please?
Sorry, sir. Your Brit card says you've exceeded your alcohol quota for this week.
Sorry, sir. Your Brit card says you've already flown twice this year. We're having to restrict passengers with higher than average emissions profiles.
Sorry, I'm afraid your funds have been temporarily frozen. Your recent social media post did not align with the government's narrative.
Sorry, I'm afraid your Brit card says you cannot purchase any more meat this week as part of our commitment to achieving net zero.
I've just logged in using my Brit card and it's saying I've already had 3 hours of internet today and it's locked me out.
That's what they want.
That is what they want.
That is what they want. And they're trying to soft soap you into the system. Now, quickly, we keep getting the questions, what are the states that are said or states that say you can't switch? Now, apparently, you've had people who could switch in those states, but so do we know?
It's the other way around. They haven't been able to switch in those states.
Okay.
But the states that they should have a choice in, they haven't been able to switch in either. Some of them, but other ones of them have definitely done it. But the ones where the law, according to the U.S. Department of Health and Homeland Security, they say it's in Texas, Florida, Mississippi, Wyoming, and Georgia. 5 Republican states where you do not have a choice except Real ID. And of course, there's South Dakota that's 99% of the way there, but they say you do have a choice and just come in and let us know, right? But there are other states where apparently you have a choice, but the DMVs are not giving everybody the choice. Some DMVs are giving you a choice and some aren't. And that's the interesting thing about this recording and reporting that we're having done here, figuring this out.
I have had ironically, I've looked at some of the DMV sites, and there are states where the only way you can have a non-real ID is to not be a citizen. So people these are states where they issue driver's licenses to people who are undocumented, I assume. And therefore, undocumented people can get non-federal ID, but citizens can't.
Okay, so how do you market to people a complete control system that will literally turn them into slaves? How do you market that? So how is this being marketed, Twila?
Well, first of all, it's being marketed as a state driver's license with a star, and it's real. I had a young person say, of course I want a real ID. Why would I want a fake ID? I want a real ID, right? So it's in the terminology, then it's in the disguise because it looks like a state ID, and then it's got a star. The only one that doesn't have a star is Washington, and they've got the U.S. flag. So of course, people love stars, people love U.S. flags. Then you don't tell them about you just don't tell them about everything that's happening in the background. You don't tell them about how it can be used. You don't tell them about federal control. You just let them think it's a standard state driver's license and it's got a cool star on it, or it's got a cool flag on it, and it's making me more secure. And they say that it's going to stop terrorists, which is not true because we're breeding internal terrorists here, right? And they're going to be citizens. And then you don't even have to, you can get a real ID without being a citizen. So there's a whole bunch of people who can get a real ID who are not citizens. So it's not even just for citizens. And so you tell them it's going to stop terrorists, it's going to keep them more secure, it's going to stop the border incursion, which is not true. You tell them all of these things about safety, security, and cool.
Okay, now sorry, Polly, go ahead.
And convenience. Convenience is a really big thing because digital is all about convenience. And in Minnesota, we stopped the digital ID by letting the legislators know that it would ping the government every time you used it. They didn't know that. They didn't know that.
Twila, my concern is the children.
Yes.
They are definitely trying to tell parents your child is going to be safe. Your child will never be sex trafficked or kidnapped if you go along with this. And you can see in the marketing of the videos we saw before with the tattoos, they're trying to make it cool for a child. And I can just see little children saying, I'm going to have a dragon, I'm going to have a fairy. I can see where they're going with this. And that to me we'll talk about how it's not going to stop your child being sex trafficked or kidnapped.
No, and I would say particularly when it gets wrapped into financial, I sort of see like somebody coming with a knife and slicing off that little tattoo and everything and all the controls that are in there and giving them access, right? It's a terrible thing, But in addition to that, I would just want to say here that the Real ID is not for people under the age of 18. So they're not actually doing it at all for people under the age of 18. So just know that. But this whole thing about digitizing, putting it on your arm, making it cool, and then that being able to stop it, well, not really, especially if you can tear it off. If you put it inside or you put it in your organs, like that one woman was saying, right? That might be a little bit more difficult, and maybe you could track them, but do you really want to be that trackable? You can still have the child taken, and they can still do with the child whatever they want to do, but it's not tending to be the organ. It's tending to be that you can just rip off.
Wait a minute. I'm going to interrupt and just because Thomas Massey just got the final vote to force a petition vote on the release of the Epstein files. Right now, we have a government that is essentially run by the people who did Epstein or had Epstein files. I mean, this has been perfectly clear. And so you are giving this power to the people who ran one of the largest pedophile networks in the history of the world. Can we connect the dots here?
Well, you can't trust the government. I mean, I'm sorry, but you cannot give your identification and your access to everything in your life or your protection to the government. This idea that the government is going to protect you. Look at everything the government has done to us. Look at everything, all the ways that they lied to us, all the ways they tried to control us. The idea that by taking a government ID that is digital, putting it on you, that this is all going to protect you. Look at government power. People never think about government power.
But right now we have a government power where you have the bankers control monetary policy and the legislators control fiscal policy, with the digital ID and programmable money, you're talking about giving bankers control of fiscal policy. And so it's not going to be the government that we grew up with, and they lied plenty, but now we're talking about literally the bankers taking over control of, and implementing taxation without representation and complete control of your money and ability to program and put it with the social credit system. And if I get back to you, if you look at the people who've been implicated in the pedophilia scandals all along in the country, we're talking about that group of people. So the notion that your children are going to be safer under the system is about the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, and says you can't connect the dots. Who do you think is doing all this trafficking?
Well, and the thing is, what we're talking about is public-private partnerships here, and really where the government, or what should we say, the tail wagging the dog, right? And the tail are the elite, the tail are the powerful, the tail are the people who give the donations to the members of Congress and to the members of the state legislators, and then control from the back. And clearly with Real ID here in Minnesota, who were we fighting? The Chamber of Commerce, the Minnesota Business Partnership, the data industry. These are all of the people who got their way, not the constituents who put these people in office, but the people who give the money, who have the power, who the legislators look up to for one reason or the other, right? And so they are being controlled by the people in the background, but the one who actually writes the laws and the rules are members of Congress and states who have essentially been taken over by their payers.
Most, not everyone.
Not everyone.
So one question I get, and I promised I would ask on behalf of a state auditor, is many people say, well, I have a passport, I'm already in a federal database. Why is being in the Real ID database different than being in the passport database? Well, how do you explain that, Twila?
I would say it's not about being in the database. As much as I'd like us all not to be in the database, we are in the database with the passport if we're going to fly outside of this country. You don't have to fly out of this country, so you don't have to get a passport. But now with Real ID, you would, unless you want to be in the other system. The thing that I would say is, what's the purpose? For a passport, the purpose is to get you in and out of the country, in and out of the country. You got a passport book. That passport book is not going to become your ID that you have to, take everywhere, because it's got a singular purpose, in and out of the government. But the purpose here is to create an internal passport for everything that you might do inside this government, and for it to be tracked, for it to be controlled, for it to be all under a facial recognition system as you walk around in the world doing your business, as they create this facial recognition system, and to know where you are, and then to know who you're with, because it'll be digital and they'll have it, right? They'll know everyone you're with and where you're going and what you're doing. And then it'll be tied to your money. So you have to look at the purpose of this federal ID, the purpose of the Real ID, the purpose of the passport's very different. They want you into the Real ID, and wherever they want you, they have a reason for it. They haven't got everybody in. They're pressing to get you in. Why do they want you in? Just like they wanted you vaxxed, just like they wanted to control your life until you got vaxxed. You've got to look at their purpose and their goal and thwart them at what they're trying to do.
So tell us about the coalition letter that you just sent to Washington.
Yeah, so this was it's a wonderful thing. So we have asked Senator Rand Paul, as chairman of the Homeland Security Committee and as a longtime opponent of all national identification systems, if he would hold a hearing on the Real ID Act. He put out a bill on September 11th to repeal the Real ID Act. It's called the Safeguarding Personal Privacy Act. And it is S 2769. Yeah, 2769. And so we're asking him to hold a hearing on his bill to get rid of the Real ID system. And we got 33 other organizations. So there's 34 organizations that have signed it, and 41 state legislators from around the country. I think from 15 or 16 or 17 different states who are asking him to hold a hearing. This is so secret and so deceptive, what's going on with the Real ID, and we need to have public exposure. And he can do this with public exposure. And everybody who's listening here should call Senator Rand Paul's office and say, I love your bill to get rid of the Real ID. Will you hold a hearing on this? Will you move this forward? So that he knows that he has a lot of people in his camp. We need as much pressure as possible and as much affirmation, positive affirmation going into his office to say, please, it's really up to you. Start this ball rolling.
That's great.
And thank you for signing it, Catherine.
Oh, you're welcome.
Remind everyone again where they can go to do that.
To do what?
To sign.
Oh, well, this is a coalition letter that's already been sent in. We are creating something like you're talking about. It's just not ready yet. Okay. And so also the other thing that I don't know if you know since the last time I talked in here is we have a truck, a big semi, 53-foot truck that is going around the country carrying the refuserealid.org message. But we are going to get a bigger, more colorful sign, and he's coming back to get a new design on the truck. And so, and we're going to have a special way to figure out whether or not we can, people are actually looking at the truck. So anyway, so there's a bunch of things that we're trying to do to let the public know what the truth is, because they're just shocked. When they hear it, they're just shocked. They just think it's a driver's license with a star. And that's not at all what it is.
So Twila, tell us how to find your website and what we can do to support you and help.
So refuserealid.org, refuserealid.org. That's how you find it. You can go to the bottom and register that you have switched. You can find all of the one-page documents that you can share with people, like 10 reasons to refuse the Real ID, or the how to make a switch, lose your Real ID. We got that document up there. Thank you, Lou, for showing those documents. They can just click on them and print them out and share them. Certainly, they can support us financially so we can pay for things like adding big banners. This time we're going to do big banners to that truck. So I'd love, for support, to just pay for the cost of that. He's doing it for free. He loves the message. So he's going around the country coast to coast with this message, but we need something bolder on his truck than it is now. So that's going to cost us some money. So supporting us in that realm, that would be great. And then, of course, telling your legislator that you have figured out what Real ID is, and to join with the other state legislators around the country who are moving to either repeal their conformity with the Real ID, the Federal Real ID Act, and to get themselves out of this, or to do some poison pills. So we've got some poison pills, like making sure nobody ever has to have a biometric photo, or making sure nobody ever has to have a Real ID, and the state driver's license is always available and always talked about. There are different things depending on the state, how agreeable it might be for the state. But the fact of the matter is, privacy is a bipartisan issue. There are Democrats who don't like the Real ID, and there are lots of Republicans. But they have to figure out what it is. And as soon as they figure out what it is,
So now that many states passed laws saying no CBDCs, but now that the Genius Act has passed and the Clarity Act is expected to pass, we have new model legislation to stop programmable money, and we're moving around the states and also hoping to put something in at the federal level. If you look at how they set up the programmable money pipe in the Genius Act, it's very sneaky. So we think if we come around and all the states that pass no CBDC, pass no programmable money. That's what we need to do. We need to kill programmable money, and we need to kill the digital ID. And if we kill both, then this system can't snap into place, and slavery can't happen. So anyway, you've been very generous with your time, Twila. You've come here. I think you've been on Financial Rebellion 4 or 5 times. We keep having you back, and I just think you are doing the most wonderful and amazing job. And I would just ask everybody to keep Twila and her organization in your donations, in your prayers, in your thoughts. Spread the word, spread the links, put this on social media, get this out, because I cannot tell you, the digital ID is the doorway to slavery, and we cannot let it happen.
Yeah. And if they want me to come and present, they can certainly contact the office as well. Because some people just have to like really hear it and ask questions to understand it. But the more that can be done by everybody in their own corners of the world, the faster that we can stop the digital ID. That's what we need. The public, we need the Americans. It's up to the Americans, and if we have the Americans acting against Real ID, we will win. We will.
Right.
Win. But
The court of popular opinion can stop this.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Twila, I just want to thank you for educating us. I don't know that we'd be anywhere near as educated on this important subject if it wasn't for you and the way you explain it so well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And to our viewers, we have to go now, but we will be back next week with Financial Rebellion.
My name is Stacy Gaona Hyatt. And
this is a story about your husband.
This is about my husband. He was murdered by the hospital and he had COVID.
And now I have to ask you this question. Did your husband take the COVID-19 vaccination stroke shot?
No, he did not.
Why didn't he?
Because we did not agree with it. And I think every person has the right to make a decision if they want to take any kind of, inject anything in their body, and we decided not to.
All right, take us right back to the beginning.
Okay.
Tell us what happened.
Well, the first thing I want to say is my husband was gone too soon. And he was 56 years old, and we both came out with COVID. But I want to tell you in the beginning that he was murdered, not killed. He was murdered because after he died, I was able to save my whole family with the correct protocol. My husband was on the hospital protocol, and I honestly regret even sending him to the hospital. We went to all these events, and there were certain medications we were not allowed to have, but remdesivir was like on top of the list. And I'm kind of wondering, why did they give my husband a flu vaccine? He was sick. So anyways,
in hospital,
in the hospital, I read with all the billings, we got charged for a vaccine for the flu. He was sick. And one thing I've learned with my mom, you don't get a flu shot when you're sick. Well, they gave him a flu shot. Anyways, we go back to 2021, and we're July 29th. He came out with a fever. So 5 days go by, I believe, and on Tuesday, we both test positive for COVID. So we just lay around the house all day. And I just take Tylenol in the day, and we took our vitamins, and I took NyQuil at night. My mind was assuming he was feeling the same way as me. We both had COVID. But what happened with Joe is he started talking different on the 8th day. And so I was concerned. Come to find out, I called 911, and he went to the hospital. He was transported to Grossmont Hospital in La Mesa on August 6, 2021. He went in there. Well, the hospital, sometimes I don't like saying certain things because it's like used against you. His oxygen level was super low, but by the time he got in there, it was at 79, and now these days people are surviving at 79 with oxygen level. But the point is, my husband was fine, to the point to saying, I want a second opinion, I want out of here. But and the hospitals were just hysterical. We need to get you on the vent. We need to take, you need to get on the vent immediately. Your husband's not cooperating, and he's going to die. And finally, we're saying, we'll do other options, but we're not going on the vent right now. And so they gave him the CPAP and all those, and then they did a 5-day treatment of remdesivir. We were able to FaceTime with my phone as he was in the hospital for 5 days, and he was calling me, and at one point he says, there's something very wrong going on in here, I need to get out of here. And I said, do you want me to call the cops to come escort you? And his son was thinking of coming, But at this point, we weren't sure. So we're like, what do we do? I have COVID. They're not going to let me in. There was so many protocols around there. There was so much security. They wouldn't let me in anyways. So I get a call on August 11th, 2021, and it's the doctor. Well, let me rewind back. My husband did take off his oxygen a few times. But this whole day I didn't hear from him, and he was calling me. Suspiciously, his phone breaks. And my husband calls me. He doesn't call me that day, but the doctor calls me and said, your husband's going to die if you do not put him on the vent. And I'm just shaken up at this point. So all the things I hear is my husband's going to die. I want to save his life. And I'm there. My son gets on the call and we discuss it, and there was nothing else to do. He was going to die. So we put him on the vent. And I wish I could, let me talk to him. You know, what is his oxygen level at? So they put him on the vent, and they didn't just put him on the vent. And let me rewind back a little. When he was at home, there was not much coughing, but apparently he had silent hypoxia. So they said he was coughing so much that they had to heavily sedate him and paralyze him. So that's what they're doing to him. At one point, when he was on he was intubated, they were worried about his kidneys. Well, come to find out later on, there was a kink in one of the catheters, and so it was backed up. So another issue that they did. My husband was on the vent for all the way until October 2nd, and that's when he died. And that's pretty much my story.
What part of that did they give him a flu vaccine? When was that?
It's the first week, I believe.
So that's terrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
And have you looked at his medical records and seen how much?
I got the medical records because there is a group out here, attorneys that will take cases. However, they did not take my case because if you look on every page, they make Joe seem so sick. Like he's unhealthy, he's obese. Well, let me tell you this, that my whole family, there's someone who has diabetes, high blood pressure, heart, a stent in their heart, they're all overweight, but yet I got them the right medicine. I said, don't go to the hospital. And they all survived. I didn't kill one person, but look at how many these hospitals. So they could say all these things were wrong with my husband, but he could have survived if he got the correct medication. They injected him with poison. That's what they did. That's why he died. And I just want to tell you guys, I am a Christian and I know God's hands in everything, but I'm not going to, justice needs to be served. I'm angry at what they did and what they got away with, and they're listening to Fauci and the CDC protocol that killed tons of people in here. And COVID was not a horrible sickness that flew all over the states. There was very easy medication. If you did the right protocol, you would get better right away. I had it twice, and I didn't have to go to the hospital. I was fine.
Did he get any abuse for not having vaccines?
Once they found out he wasn't vaccinated, they're like, oh, I'm so sorry that he wasn't vaccinated. We'll see what we can do, but I don't think there's anything we can do. That's pretty much. So the only thing I tried to push in there while he was in there, and I couldn't see him until his last weeks, but he actually, I tried to push that they would give him vitamin C, D3, and zinc, and they said they gave it to him. But yeah.
The medical records?
I don't remember. I think it might have been, yeah. But they said multivitamins.
And did you see how much he was worth dead?
I did not look at those paperworks, but I know when you get on the vent, you get a huge amount of money, and then when they die, and you get the remdesivir, you get money as well. So yeah, and you know, they had him hooked up to the PEEP and to the oxygen, and he was at 100%. So they look at all this support that he was getting. But if you're injecting someone with more and more poison, his health is declining. But if he got the correct if there was a good protocol, if they did what was right, I think he would have been fine and recovered.
Now, is there anything else you want to say about this story?
I want justice to be served. I think my husband was murdered, and I hope the truth comes out eventually.
Well, we're going to put him on the bus. We're going to sort that out.
Thank you.
This and all CHD TV programming is made possible by generous support from viewers like you. Please consider making a contribution today to keep our programming going strong. Thank you.